Hi, Rebecca.
Hi there.
So we're here to talk a little bit about thought leadership today in the B2B marketing and PR space. Guess first obvious question to start on, what's thought leadership?
I think it's about sharing original content
Yeah.
and perspectives and positioning that is your own on a subject area.
Yeah. We do quite a lot of this for our clients at Grammatik. And when we're talking to clients about why it's something they should do, what are the things you normally say to them in terms of, the reasons for why it's a good thing to add into the overall mix of marketing and PR?
I think a large part of it, yes, it ultimately plays a part in your product life cycle, but the age-old brand awareness, because without that, you're not going to have any awareness of your product. So in a B2B, from a B2B perspective, I think it's really critical to have your positioning on a subject area.
So for our clients in particular then, when they're out there sharing bits of thought leadership, it's about building credibility and trust for them in their space. And I guess, you know, what- it helps cut through the noise of, there's a lot of information out there, a lot of different types of marketing activity that are currently are going on all the time. So trying to rise above that a little bit and
Yeah.
share some thought leadership is a good thing
Yeah.
to do. And um, can you talk a little bit about, when you're sharing thought leadership about positioning businesses as category leaders or leaders in the space, how that kind of works with thought leadership, why that's a good thing to do.
I think there's many factors involved in that. And again, we talked about cutting through the noise, we talked about trust and credibility, and we talked about the role that it plays briefly in that product sales lifestyle cycle. But I think crucially, it comes to the point of looking at the wider picture when it comes to marketing communication. So any content that's out there will ultimately build your search presence. It will build your answer engine presence. And now we're going to the point of answer engine optimization, generative engine optimization. So it's content ultimately. If it's got a strong backlink back to your website, back to any further credible content to your blog, it persists on that journey. But equally, it's giving you tangible results to look at the authority of your content and the performance of it as well.
Yeah. And you mentioned a little bit about AI earlier. So with creating unique thought leadership for your own company and your own brand, I guess that gives you a unique voice in your space, and then it gives you a piece of content that we always talk about sweating your assets at Grammatik. And then when you've got a piece of content that you created and a positioning maybe about the business or the industry that you work in, you then can spin that off into other places and other kind of communications. So I mean, we create on fifth season of a podcast now for All the Desk, which I think when some people talk about thought leadership, they think we're just written pieces of content. That's not always the case, is it? Maybe you talk a little bit about All the Desk.
Yeah, that, and it's a really great example because the content in itself, it's all maximized by the participant of the podcast as well as Autodesk itself. So they're appearing on a podcast. They're positioning their knowledge on the design and manufacturing industry. They're sharing it from their personal channels, say LinkedIn, but also potentially that their business is sharing it as well. So you're amplifying the reach within your industry to a broad audience that is a suitable target for your own business as well. So that content is repurposed on their website. It's on every single key streaming channel you can imagine: Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, and so on. And it's so effectively done because it's distributed across so many different channels. Simply through an audio podcast recording, such an effective way to do it.
Yeah, and you mentioned the word evergreen there, which I guess means content that is not necessarily connected to a case study or a particular moment in time. Do you think thought leadership can straddle the two in terms of being something that's a bit more long term or picking up on specifics within an industry or within a kind of particular train of thought? I guess
I think press coverage and your involvement in commenting, particularly when you're reacting perhaps to something within the industry, you're approached by an outlet, a publication, and they want you to provide some insight and commentary. That is effectively evergreen content. It is standalone. It might not necessarily need to be repurposed, but it's positioning yourself as an authority on that subject and giving your opinion and your voice.
And just on thought leadership in particular, if a business was thinking about going into using thought leadership as part of their communication strategy. Would you advise, I guess maybe it depends on the business, trying to get key spokespeople within that business to be a recurring feature with thought leadership, or should you play to your strengths to get different people to do different things, or how would that normally work?
I think it really depends on the subject and the content itself as well. So perhaps you have an individual who is not confident in front of the camera, but perhaps they're better in written word. Then you know what your approach to that is. You'd rather position them to be perhaps posting on their social channels or producing a blog. Whereas perhaps you've got a more charismatic leader who is more comfortably placed in front of a camera or dealing with a journalist, for example. And then, yes, you've got subject knowledge. So naturally, you are going to play someone, whether that's an engineer, whether that's a technical specialist, a product specialist, to be better placed to be commenting on a subject. Whereas again, on the flip, sometimes you might have a publicist doing that for you because that is the nature of their job to react to point to impress. So it ultimately depends on the subject, and it ultimately depends on the method, the outlook, communication.
On that in particular, we talked a little bit about how thought leadership isn't always written content, and we've done stuff with Autodesk, podcast format, presumably. Other big thing at the minute about live events being perhaps becoming more premium because with AI coming on stream and there's a lot more generated content out there, having someone real talking about stuff, it's going to become more effective for businesses. So presumably, thought leadership topics that can be rolled into, say, event speak opportunity, conference speak opportunities is a good route as well to maximize content.
Absolutely. I think that falls into a content strategy as well. So like Luxor Turner is a really great example of that, where we've secured them speaking opportunities at events that have tied into wider content opportunities evolving around thought leadership after the event. So back to your point of sweating your assets, so it's elongating that message. It's continuing to champion their position in the industry. It's not immediately pitching out a product or pitching out a project that's been worked on. Hey, see this, come and work with us. It's a case of keeping in the back of people's minds and building that trust, breaking through that noise that gives them the reassurance that actually you're potentially the right partner to work with, or you're potentially the right person to approach for commentary on that topic in the future. It's just that elongation of a message and that brand awareness.
And what would you say about, we've already talked about AI about 3 times already. We're going to be talking for about 5 minutes, but we'll talk some more about it. So, I mean, if you've got a hot topic, hot potato, that businesses or companies are maybe a little bit concerned about developing a position or positioning on. We work a lot with creative studios and creative tools, and AI is quite a contentious thing when it comes to people being worried about job losses and how it's going to transform industries. So how would a business go about necessarily just on that topic, but considering a position with thought leadership on a topic that might be a little bit contentious?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, you need to align within the business and have an ethical use policy. You need some kind of policy that everyone is aware of and aligned in internally on the use of AI, generative AI, most likely. Be that ChatGPT, be that Gemini, be that Midjourney, be that an AI function within any tool that you're using. I think WhatsApp has one now. So I think it's aligning on that internally, so you have expectations set. And then obviously, yes, in terms of how you're creating that content, I think ultimately, as long as you're using it for automation in a data sense, so to make your lives easier and to streamline a process, but not to take away from the creative impetus per se. I think it's about streamlining and giving yourself the tools to make your voice and make your content amplified and so much better than it was before, but not to take away your tone, not to take away, as I say, your ethics and kind of the originality of it. It's purely to amplify it and to strengthen it.
Yeah. And so, excuse me, so I guess for any business when it comes to thought leadership, it's about, kind of making sure that you're aligned internally with what the message is before you got to go out and talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Final closing thoughts, Rebecca, on thought leadership and why it's a good thing for businesses to do. We covered quite a few good reasons already in terms of the value that it adds to an overall communication strategy and a communications mix.
Yeah.
What would you say to a business out there who may be thinking, oh, this sounds like quite a good thing to get into?
Well, I did a bit of research prior to this conversation and just pulling some really credible stats actually. And I think it was a study between Edelman and LinkedIn that discovered that 89% of decision makers say that good thought leadership improves their perception of an organization. So that's a really, really strong figure. And it shows you actually how that quality content can positively position you to a potential partner. And likewise, 58% of B2B decision makers spend at least 1 hour per week consuming thought leadership content. So it does cut through the noise. It can be an incredibly effective tool within your strategy, I think. And I think ultimately, that good quality content comes down to who is positioning in it, who is giving the authority on it, their subject knowledge on the matter, and actually making sure that it's cohesive with your overall strategy, because you don't want to ultimately go out with one message and then contradict with another, because you will be caught out on that. So I think it's about consistency, keeping the brand perception into consideration and milking as many channels as you can effectively to get that message across.
Cool. All right. Thank you very much, Rebecca.